I thought that was so clever. And again, going back to this, we've talked about sort of using negative feedback to your advantage. I think I've seen signs walking around New York City where people put out a signboard with chalk in front of the restaurant that said, Bruce gave us 1 star on Yelp. Come in and taste the worst tacos you've ever had in your entire life.
Yeah, I love that.
This judo flip, but yeah, that was especially clever with the whole.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to another edition of the $1 Billion Brand Podcast with Brian and Bill. Whoop, whoop. Brian, always good to see you. I'm excited to have our conversation today. It's been a busy week. It's been a crazy busy week.
Yeah, it has been a crazy week. I've been bird dogging some of your social, and a clip that we talked about regarding the brand of politics, not taking a side. Yeah, not the left, not the right, not even the middle, but just like talking about the brand positioning. It's kind of gone viral, hasn't it?
I don't know. It hasn't gone viral, but it's gotten a lot of attention. And the kind of attention that it's getting, of course, is the first thing. And I think this is really the positive of it, is that I would say that the lion's share of communication back has been, hey, that was a really fair assessment, which in my opinion is the hallmark of you did it right? You didn't come out and you didn't lean one direction or another. You simply looked at it from a brand standpoint. And from that, you were able to get some interesting commentary. And I've had some really interesting comments back. People that say, well, what if they did this, or what if they did that, or how about, this option or that option? And that's been really interesting dialogue from a brand standpoint, right? Like, what would you do if this situation happened where suddenly your spokesperson became the problem? And so, yeah, you've got this great team and you've got all this activity that's happening and all the rest of it, but all of a sudden your spokesperson can't be your spokesperson the same way anymore. What do you do about it? And I think from a brand challenge standpoint, that's really interesting because it mirrors things like what happens when brands go into tailspin, like Blockbuster Video or Toys R Us or Sears and Roebuck or whatever. When something happens and the brand's in trouble, and then for whatever reason, leadership can't agree on the fact that either there is a problem or what to do about the problem, which in essence is what we're watching happening now. And so I just find it a really interesting brand issue to say, the structure is a little different, right? They're not all a part of a single corporation per se, but they act like a single body in a certain respect. And they have a brand image and a perception issue, and it's a significant one. So I think from a branding standpoint, I find this to be fascinating. And if you take the politics out of it, I don't care who the people are in this context. What I care about is there's a lot to be learned here. And that was the way that we framed it up. And it's been generating some really interesting responses. At the same time, it's also been generating exactly what you would expect, right? You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Get out of politics, like blah, blah, blah. But I think the people that are actually giving it thought and saying, hey, this is an interesting model to kind of look at because it's happening in real time and much faster than it would happen in the corporate world, there's a lot to be learned.
Absolutely. And you don't have to look too far outside corporate America either for, applicable case studies. I think about Travis Kalanick, who basically, built Uber and then we're trying to run it right into the ground.
Yeah.
He had to, as amazing as he is, there's a lot of problems behind that founder, and they had to get rid of them.
Well, if you keep going, WeWork, Tesla, the list just goes on and on.
Jen Rubio over at Away Luggage, there's sort of a brand that was on the rise a few years ago. I think it was like 2019. They were just on fire. And, they had some problems between the founders or their co-founders. She said some things. She said some things that was she said. Anyway, the other founder quietly, either was taken out of the picture or resigned or something happened. So, yeah, happens all the time. It's just happening on a national stage. It's an election year. So anytime we're talking about politics or religion or any of these sort of subjects that are polarizing, even, marketing, your other post got a lot of comments from plumbers and the electricians, right? When you said no one tells.
So that one's on the rise. So I figured it was going to be the politics one that was going to get, like just go crazy because it's such a hot topic. But no, it was our dialogue that was cut down to talk about, hey, everybody thinks they're a marketing expert and nobody says the same things to plumbers or mechanics. And the plumbers and mechanics of the world came out and were like, oh, I beg to differ, mon frere. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. So I found it really interesting. I guess while we don't see it, it's the same all over. Apparently, everybody sticks their nose in something they know nothing about, regardless of what avenue you're in.
Yeah, this happens to me too. At my house, I do the cooking on the barbecue, and sometimes my kids want to tell me how to cook the chicken or the meat or the kebabs, and I'm like, no, I got it.
That's a bold move. I mean, how old are your kids? That's a big move to come up to dad and be like, hey, by the way, I don't think you're doing that right.
Yeah, it's the 16-year-old track and field runner. Now,
say no more.
In his defense, I was 16 once, and I thought I knew everything, and so. This is just part of, it's a rite of passage to think that you start thinking that you know more than dad.
Oh, yeah.
I said, pump the brakes, bro. I am the grill master. At some point, I will pass not the baton, but the
spatula, the tongs. Yeah, right.
Someday you can be as great as me, but not yet.
So you brought an interesting article to my attention the other day, just sort of jumping into it with the Not Mayo commercial. And I saw that in the lineup today and wanted to talk about it. What a fantastic example that's nearly liquid death level fun in marketing. Where did you stumble across that? Because their work is just proof that you can always tell a great story no matter what. And what a phenomenal take to come at it the way that they did, to say, we're gonna take people that hate mayonnaise and show them how much this is like mayonnaise by telling them that it's not, and then watching and filming their reactions to it. I mean, brilliant twist.
I'm in the camp. I absolutely despise mayonnaise. I'm a mustard guy. So yeah. My dad was that way, and I'm this way. It's genetic. I think that in our family, we hate mayo. And in any case, yeah. I mean, I was looking at the Cannes Film Festival, which happened just a few weeks ago, and I was thinking, when is one of my TV spots going to be at Cannes? But that's a separate issue. And looking at some of these people that are winners, and I had to respect this one. I just thought it was great. Let's pick it apart a little bit. So what do we love about it? What I love is they are, what's the problem to be solved? Purists who love mayo would say that this is not mayo, right? That's the core issue. So that's the demographic, is people who love mayo and know that they love their mayo. I think that's the audience. And so to prove their point, they're taking it to people on the opposite side of the fence who absolutely despise it, like me, and they're trying to see if they can detect the mayo, and so they're proving their case by the opposite, the enemy, hating their product, only confirming that it's legitimately mayo, even though it's not. If that makes sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense. And in going that direction, what it does is it opens up the door to great theater, which is, of course, the very heart of edutainment, right? So just like Liquid Death tapped into, and I keep going back to this, but it's only because it was so incredibly funny, is licking the sweat off a fat guy's back. This thing is the same. Like, I love that they kept getting people in the gag reflex, like that, because it's just good TV. It's just flat out good theater to watch people gag on something that they hate. Like, this is a universal, like, you laugh about this no matter what, and it doesn't matter where you see it. Your buddy in college, horking up a lung, you're laughing at him. Like, that's just the way it is. And that trips right back into this thing. So they say, no, it's not mayo. It's not mayo. And they go, it looks like mayo. And no, it's not mayo. That's the whole point. And they're like, it gets the same reaction as mayo. And in doing that, they've done exactly what they need to do, which is to say to the people who, for whatever reason, need a mayo substitute, this is so like the original that it can even trigger the people who hate it and have been told that it isn't it because we're that close. And I think it's just a brilliant marketing strategy. Do you happen to know the agency that's behind it?
I don't. I could look it up. But yeah, I thought that was just like intelligence on another level. I thought that was such a creative way to solve that problem. Very, very clever.
This is the thing that I miss. And I think, for the people listening, everything has gotten so fast, nobody's thinking anymore. Like we have to do it. I wouldn't be a CMO right now if you held a gun to my head, because I think CMOs have been put in the worst possible position. How in the world can they be successful? Budgets are stretched thin, economy is tight, the expectation of the leadership team is not just right now, but yesterday. Like, why didn't you already get it for me? And the digital thing has become, and the social thing has become so microscopically fast that no one has any time. Like, when was the last time you had time to put your feet up on a desk and throw ideas back and forth? And I think what we're seeing is that the Madison Avenue bunch and a couple of other, I say Madison Avenue to reflect a level of creative shop, not the actual location, but the Madison Avenue thinking that's been protected by some of these agencies, it just shines through so much more. Because, when you think back to the late 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, the agencies were still trying to hit on that level, and social and digital hadn't so robbed them of the thinking time that it was just hurry up and choose something out, just hurry up and choose something out. And this shows that there's still some groups that protect their creative and their strategic thinkers long enough that they can say, okay, the first 10 ideas were garbage. Now we've gotten to the 11th idea, and the 11th idea could be really funny, and then they protect enough production time that it really pulls through. And you just don't see that very much anymore.
I'll take the other point of view. I would like to be a CMO today. I would like to step up to the plate and take some swings. I think I would just approach it differently. So I see traditional TV spots like this one as more top of funnel. Right? Like, so you're solving problems as top of funnel. You're focused on, awareness and people coming into consideration. And I've seen like short form content. Like, I wouldn't cut this down into a 15 or a 10 or a 5. I wouldn't even bother. I would just like say, this is our spot, put a stake in the ground. This is top of funnel, end of story. And then focus around other things. Short form stuff that could be a quick little hit, a 10, a 15, a 19 or 20 second that played off themes of this. And maybe it's more man on the street stuff, because this was kind of man on the street style, right? So there's a lot you could do with short form. And then I would consider the short form stuff middle of the funnel or even bottom of the funnel, like to say, here's a coupon code to go get it in-store. Maybe it's an in-store activation. Maybe it's like some other mid or bottom of the funnel activation. I would just look at it totally differently and embrace the short form for what it is. Lack of attention. People need to be entertained. If you're on TikTok, this huge renaissance is happening on TikTok where suddenly, even if you've amassed millions of followers, it doesn't matter. You could have one video go viral and you could have your 15 minutes of fame. It's happening with this Haktua girl, if you've seen this thing, all over the place. She's had one crazy video pop off, and suddenly she's a star. I hope that she capitalizes on it, but it's like, doesn't matter if you've built all this equity over all this time with people. For TikTok, that's out the window. Instagram, it's still in place where you have a community, you're building relationships. It's a different relationship than TikTok, which is like a swipe left, swipe right, almost like a dating app kind of thing, even though I aged out of that dating app. Never had that experience with swiping left or swiping right. I'm glad that I didn't. So I'll say, I'll give you a reverse card, the Uno card on the CMO. I'll take the CMO job. I'll pass up on the dating apps.
I don't know. We did some research a couple of years ago with CMOs, and I found it really interesting. The results that we got back is that they're being brought in as specialists for short duration project completion. So it's not brand building anymore. And I'm terrified about the potential accuracy of your statement that on TikTok that doesn't matter anymore. And I certainly hope that you're wrong. I really do. I hope that the flash in the pans that are that, and I've already seen some of them do this, have burnt their bright light, and then like a firework, they go up, they do their thing, and then they fall down into obscurity again. And I'm glad to see that lesson is there. But regardless, going back to my CMO comment, what we found was that most of them were not thinking about brand any longer. They were brought in as specialists against a specific activity set. We need an email campaign and you're an email specialist. Come in and give us that activity. Or we need some kind of e-commerce thing. Help us pilot that. Or we need some kind of a brand story thing. Pilot that. But they're not intended to stay. The whole idea at this point is that they are under 18 months and out the door. And I find that to be crazy because when that kind of thinking becomes so short form, everything is about, patching a hole in the boat. It's not about where the boat's headed. It's not about long game. It's about, I need this thing, put it in place, and I need that thing and put it in place. And the bigger question of strategy and long-term development of brand message and story and perception and reputation and all that seemingly has just fallen out the window, which means, in my humble opinion, it's skyrocketing in value now because it's the thing that nobody is going to have. And so these groups like the Mayo Company that come out and start thinking about something and actually creating something that has some resonance, I think is, the value of that's going to wind up showing itself very well.
And that's why the business that you and I are in is a good place to be right now, because that's why we exist. Like, you have your creative agency, I have my production company. Like, we hope that brands, CMOs will come to us, lean on us for the gap that exists in their company. I mean, we can, augment or supplement or be the creative team, right, on their behalf. I mean, I think if companies, like clients, have the budget, they should hire a CCO, Chief Creative Officer, who is either in line or right below the CMO. The CMO, I think, should be like leading all brand activities and really be holding hands with head of sales to coordinate, how they're going to launch campaigns, but also he or she is the steward of the brand to make sure that they don't have like a Budweiser debacle and accidentally, decide to sail the ship into the rocks temporarily. I think that CMO spot should be able to see like the whole landscape and help the chief creative officer make good decisions, whether or not this is on brand, off brand. And then there's a whole execution team. And that execution can happen by hiring people like, Brand Boss or the Good Brain to do production or rebranding. But,
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've seen is the brands that have worked with us, and through TikTok, we've worked with now over 65 brands that have come to us in the last year plus. All of them are seeking the same thing, and it doesn't matter. We've been working with a group that's just a little under 2 billion, and we've been working with groups that are napkin note startups, and the common denominator between all of them is that they don't know what story to tell. They've done the pricing and the promotion and the, partnerships and the innovation thing to the point that they can't get anywhere. They can't beat their salespeople any harder to make them convert. And they've finally come around to the recognition that, hey, when we look at the rest of the category, we really do look and sound just like everybody else. And it's time to do something about that. Frankly, I'm thrilled. I feel like our industry has been waiting for that pendulum to swing back for a long time. And it's kind of nice to see the boom coming around.
I also saw this ad, I can't remember what I saw it, maybe on Instagram, but it was just like a billboard, what would you call it? In train advertising, the back to a religious spin. Do you see the Bible app?
I did. And I love that. I think, 0 SARS from Satan on the Bible app is the perfect endorsement any way you look at it.
I thought that was so clever. And again, going back to this, we've talked about sort of using negative feedback to your advantage. I think I've seen signs walking around New York City where people put out a signboard with chalk in front of the restaurant that said, Bruce gave us 1 star on Yelp. Come in and taste the worst tacos you've ever had in your entire life.
Yeah, I love that.
This judo flip. But yeah, that was especially clever with the whole...
I wish more brands would look at the history of negative in advertising and realize just how powerful that can be. But again, this goes back to the fear and ignorance of the folks that are at the helm of messaging, right? And I don't mean that to be cruel or rude. What I mean by that is they truly don't have visibility into what this is or how it works. And so, when you sit in front of a business the first time and say, I really think that we should take a negative spin on this thing, imagine the abject panic that happens, right? When it's like, well, that worked for them, but it could never work for us. And they don't realize that, of course, that same conversation happened inside the Wendy's walls and inside the Mayo walls and inside everybody else. They're like, oh my gosh, what if people don't get it? What if? But then you look at the success of a group like Liquid Death or the Mayo Group or the, Bible app, and you go, there it is. Like, people enjoy this no matter what, and you just need to be able to embrace it and use it as another tool in your toolbox. It's not the end of your reputation as you know it. It's the beginning of thoughtful, engaging entertainment that will keep people, tied to the brand.
Yeah. And I guess that's a good litmus test is that tone on brand or not? And I would guess that 99.9% of the time, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Even if, I'm not Catholic, but let's say the Pope made a joke. Can the Pope make a joke? Sure, he can. I mean, that would actually kind of be endearing if I was a Catholic, or not even if I weren't a Catholic. I would think, oh, that person who, is a religious leader has a sense of humor. He's human like the rest of us. That's great. So, you kind of want to see that.
For sure.
Yeah. Switching gears back to politics again. I'm toggling back and forth. I say politics because did you see Zuck politicking or flexing on the 4th of July on the surfboard?
I did see that. I gotta say, I think the most interesting thing about that, in my opinion, was the people who he got to respond to him on social media. Like the level of people, from a visibility standpoint. Gary Vee was on there and was responding. It's just like from a visibility standpoint, his friends and family network, social or otherwise, came out and sort of supported him. I have to be honest, though, in taking a look at it, it left me flat. I was like, this is a cheap attention-getting thing. Like, I didn't get much out of it.
Okay, so I was really the conspiracy theorist here. I was reading into it, and I was just thinking, instead of getting angry, get curious. So I got curious, and I thought, well, why would Zuck do this? To me, it was sort of a flex against TikTok. As to say, I'm an American, I'm running this huge social network called Instagram and Meta, whatever, and we're all American, made in America, by an American, for us, by us. That other company who's maybe trying to eat our lunch right now, TikTok,
right.
Chinese, they're the bad guy, we're all American. I think that was a statement about being all American, trying to, get some brownie points from those who may be thinking about getting rid of TikTok or not.
I think that's a fabulous and warm and lovely way to take a look at it. Zuck is one of those people who unfortunately is just off harmony. to me. Like, no matter what he does, it's wrong. Like, he could bake apple pie and give it to kids in a cancer ward, and for whatever reason, it would just come off as disingenuous. There's something about him as a human being that just rubs me wrong. And I know that millions of people think he's all that in a bag of chips, but every time I see him, it's like Newman, right? You just sort of slap your head and you're like, ugh, there he goes again. Like,
yeah, I mean, love him or hate him, Zuck can be a polarizing figure like Elon Musk. I think some of these guys with very high intelligence, whether you rate them on the spectrum, of intelligence, some of these guys, it's like this, the higher the IQ, the lower the social skills. That can happen, the smarter someone gets. So maybe that's baked into it. I don't know.
Possibly.
In any case, I thought it was a very smart play. And as he continues to shape his own personal brand and persona, I mean, the guy's done, BJJ, the jiu-jitsu route. Now he's a bro. He will...
Wait. Whoa. Hold on. Beep, beep, beep. Hold on a second. Do you actually think he hit bro status?
Yes.
No, Brian. No, he's not. No. Bro status? Come on. Like, he did the thing and he got the belt and whatever. But it's just, is it real-ish? I don't know.
Have you seen all these, like, Photoshop things where they they have him in, like, a beard? They sort of, like, made him more handsome or more likable. And these memes are kind of going around. I think Zuck has reached bro status. I think he's also probably maturing, even if it's all being coached to him and he's being told what to say, whatever, to build his brand, or just as a survival mechanism. Because I have no doubt that he has people in Washington politicking, trying to get TikTok banned, not because it's a good idea, but because it would help him maintain his dominance. Let's face it. Facebook was dead. If he did not acquire Instagram, Facebook was dead on arrival. And Instagram is the thing that saved him. What's going to be the thing that saves him next? Don't know. But I wouldn't bet against Mark Zuckerberg. He's a clever cat.
Interesting. I think you give him a little more credit than I would, but that's what makes the world fun and interesting. He's not... I don't know. Every time I get near him, I feel like I should shower. Like, every time I see something from him, I feel like there's an ickiness of film that comes around it, and I can't get past that with him. So he's just not one that I'll ever... he's one that I would sleep with one eye open around. I don't know. There's just something that strikes me that way about him.
Our best interests at heart. This is the Mark Zuckerberg show.
He has Zuckerberg's best interests.
He has world domination on the brain for sure. And the other thing that's scary, I mean, who are the most influential people in the world? I mean, Joe Rogan is one of them. You have to face facts. The guy has the most popular podcast on the planet. He has the ear of the country, if not the world. Who's another ultra powerful person on earth? It's Mark Zuckerberg, right? He has all of our data. He is in all of our conversations. He knows what we're saying.
Yeah, that's true.
You ever talked about, wanting a coffee, and then all of a sudden on Instagram you're scrolling up and you get an ad for a coffee? I mean,
yeah, it's creepy, isn't it?
Your phone is listening to you, and Mark's got his ears to the ground.
Without a doubt. All right, so what else have you got for us today?
Let's talk about the apparel business. Two examples I thought were interesting. One is the Zendaya and On Running collaboration. The other one is the unbranding of Abercrombie and Fitch. So, do you know the Abercrombie Fitch brand from the 90s?
I do.
So if you remember that brand, it was all about, hot-looking young guys with their shirt off, washboard abs, amazingly attractive girls, doing all the young people thing. And so CEO Mike Jeffries was very unapologetic about Abercrombie's stance back in the 2000s, the era where they were really booming. And he was basically saying, hey, if you're not cool enough, if you're not cute enough or attractive enough, don't come buy our stuff. Like, it's not for you. It doesn't fit you. If you're overweight or, you're different from this chiseled mold, well then...
Yeah, only you sexy people, right?
Go to Kmart, He was like sending me away. And so that worked for him for a while, this sort of exclusivity thing. No soup for you, whatever the stance is, until it didn't. The stock price started to fall, people stopped shopping there, and the wheels started coming off the bus. Then they hired a new CEO, and her name is Fran Horowitz, and Fran was like, listen, we got to change things up. So basically, all the AF branding and all the cool kid stuff, all that was just thrown out into the dumpster and recycled. And she's like, now we're for everyone. We accept all body shapes. We accept all people. Sort of taking that, I think, probably like Uniqlo, if you know that Japanese brand Uniqlo, that stance where, everything is sort of more generic, less branded, less about the brand, more about the people who wear it. And it's completely turned the company around. This last year, sales are up like 25%. The stock's way up. They did sales over $2 billion this last year. They're tracking even better in 2024. Complete turnaround. And the whole thing is this unbranding campaign. And I just find it fascinating.
That's the same thing that we started the pod with, was talking about what happens when you've got a leader at the helm that can't do the job any longer. And this is another great example, right? The axe had to fall on CEO number one to be the broom that you stepped over into, the new chapter, the next generation. And I think a lot of businesses have that kind of need and it's not just with people. It can be with advertising campaigns. It can be with product or service development. The structure of it, though, is the same. And when you really are paying attention to the repetitious structure of the universe, you see these same things, right? It's like this thing is out of sequence or out of harmony now with the balance of the world. And what we need to do now is bring in something that will be, or that will open the door to a new resonance with people. And I think that that's really amazing that they did that. And I think brands do that all the time. They don't always do it in the right timing. It sounds like Abercrombie's, benefited from a good sense of timing on when to pull that move and play that card. And so it sounds like, this was a real advantage to them in terms of being able to turn it around. And it sounds like they're, back on the grow, and that the, people who are invested in that company are going to be very pleased at the end of this year.
Yeah, they did a lot of consolidating too. They shut down like 700 stores. You used to be able to go into any mall, throw a rock, and you'd wander into that store. They shut 700 down, and then basically they reconfigured. And they're opening hundreds more now, but they're smaller, more boutique style, more inviting. So I have a theory on why it stopped working.
Okay.
But I thought I would ask you too, like, what do you think went wrong? Why did this strategy stop working? Because it was working in the 2000s.
I think that that's a really interesting thing. I think exclusivity is kind of like fame. It needs adjustment from time to time. And so, even the Eddie Murphys of the world fall out of favor, right? After the same flavor has been there for a while, people seek novelty. And so the exclusivity thing is really good until you're tired of being excluded, right? And this is the Fonzie jump the shark thing, for those of you old enough to know what the hell I'm talking about. You can have great, this is what Seinfeld was talking about. Like, I want to stop while the show's on top. Right? That was the whole thing. Same thing here, right? There was a thing, and the exclusivity was cool, like Studio 54, like, wow, you wanted to stand outside and see if today was the day you were going to get in. And I think Abercrombie was doing some of that, right? Like, we're for body beautiful, we're for young, energetic, enthusiastic, beautiful, and we want to maintain that. And then along around them came the world of inclusion, and they didn't pivot right to be beautiful but different. I think they probably ignored that and just tried to stay where they were. And so a more significant change wound up being required in order for them to get there. Had their look suddenly included freckles and red hair and, you know what I mean? Like, had they expanded, but still within the world of beautiful, but just uniquely beautiful, they probably could have maintained where they were and held their ground. The real interesting question is going to be what happens now, because, you know, it's funny, if you go into a Target, you'll see that all of the photography now in a Target, if you haven't been in a while, go take a peek and you'll see what I mean, has become all-inclusive to the exclusion of anybody who ever looked like a model. Every single person inside Target now is a real human being. And I'll be honest with you, as much as I was thrilled to see the inclusion, I miss the fact that there's no aspiration left. Like, it's so everyday that it's actually pulling the brand down to more of a Walmart feel because there's no aspiration in it. It's all everyday Joe and Jane. And I think in doing that, like Abercrombie, it opened the doors back up again for people to come in. But now let's watch, because the real question is going to be in 12 to 18 months. And, you know, of course, by today's financial standards, 12 to 18 months is like, it might as well be another lifetime, right? But if you take a look at this brand in 12 to 18 months, did they peak and then plateau all over again, right back to where they had been? Because I have this feeling that when everybody is equal to everybody all the time, the exact same way, all of a sudden the branding disappears. And that's the downside to what's been happening here. And I know we're going to get hate mail for this, but at the same time, it doesn't matter. No brand is for everybody. And there's a reason that Bentley doesn't have a $30,000 model, and that's because it's Bentley. And the same thing for Ferrari. And I think it's allowed, brands are allowed to choose where they are. Some of them make the mistake of excluding and not pivoting enough to stay current, and they lose their audience base. But I mean, I could sit here and rattle off brands from Bud Light, down the line on groups that have tried to change their image incorrectly or too soon or what have you, and have had long-term negative impact as a result. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally co-sign what you just said, and I'll just underscore what we've been talking about in almost every single episode of this pod, which is, what is a brand? A brand is distinct. A brand is a shorthand for what you stand for. A brand is something that is a reflection of yourself most of the time, and like you're buying it for a reason, and therefore you're willing to pay a premium for it. So what I'm afraid is that Abercrombie has become the Marriott business.
Yeah.
They're now ubiquitous. They're on every single street corner. You can walk in and it looks the same as Target or Uniqlo or American Eagle. You wouldn't even know, especially if they're unbranding literally and they're taking the AF and any kind of Abercrombie Fitch off of it. They run the risk, or they're probably already in the commodity race, that race to the bottom where you're now competing on price, maybe fabrics, but it's like, cotton is cotton, or cotton poly is cotton poly, or linen is linen. And so what is distinct now about Abercrombie Fitch? I can think of another brand that had a little bit of a flash in the pan, this brand called Supreme. Did your kids get into that at all? Supreme?
No, I'm not familiar with that brand. What's it about?
So it was super popular maybe 5 years ago, kind of a big surge in New York. And it's just called like Supreme. It's like, white letters, red background, and it was sort of plastered on everything as sort of this cool upstart of a brand. And you started seeing collaborations, and people would stand around the corner to get Supreme gear, just a T-shirt that said Supreme. And again, it was kind of exclusive, not special, maybe a little bit pricey, but like, would you stand in the rain, in like a mile-long line to get it? Back in the day, they did. But now, it's kind of gone a little bit out of style. It's not as popular. And I think Abercrombie runs the same risk of just becoming ordinary and not distinct and not standing for anything.
I think all the brands are going that way. I really do. I think I think inclusion and equality in this respect is going to be the negative of all of it. And what's going to wind up happening is brands are going to start eking out territory, or they're going to change, or they're going to open up new brands that allow them to do that from the ashes of what was left from the thing, right? The United Colors of Benetton was unique because at the time they were the only ones doing United Color, right? Like that was the whole unique thing. But now if everybody is united in every single way, the exact same way, then in essence, we've lost the individuality that made these things interesting in the first place.
So let's offer some advice to Abercrombie Fitch. I have a fun idea. It may not be a good idea, but it's a fun idea. So you remember the Twix campaign, like the left?
The left, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you do like an Abercrombie versus Fitch? And they're almost like alter egos. So like the Abercrombie is like the real nice, inclusive, loves everybody. It's got a fit for, and the Fitch is like, fuck you, man. Like, you know, this is the way it fits, and this is what you're gonna wear. It's like, maybe it's alter ego. So, are you
an Abercrombie or are you a Fitch?
Gryffindor or Slytherin? Are you like Abercrombie or Fitch? And like you can play them off each other. And there's like even two halves of a store. Like,
so is it funnier if they are Ernie and Bert different, or is it funnier if they're twins?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could play it either way. Like, and maybe the fraternal twins. I don't know. Maybe one's a girl and one's a boy.
Oh, there you go.
And so you have two halves of the store, like the good twin and the evil twin, and maybe that's what makes them just.
From a story standpoint, I love twists like that because I think that they make them really interesting. If you go back. And I can never remember what the name of the group was that did it, which coffee company, but there was a coffee company that did this great story online about, there was a British woman that was moving into the apartment and she comes down and knocks on the door and wants to borrow coffee. And then this becomes this like love affair tryst between the two of them, whatever. I think relationship in brand story is one of those things that's totally underutilized and is really, really fun when they do it. You know, Dos Equis' Most Interesting Man in the World was a phenomenal character. You know, it was just a great guy. You just wanted to get to know more about that character and you wanted to go have a drink with him. And like, there's just something interesting about that. And that construct, I think, is underutilized. And that's a shame because I think that there's a lot to play in that arena.
Yeah, I've already got the T-shirt. Fitch is a beep. You know.
That's funny. That's really funny. So here's one that you pulled up that I kind of had me going, and that's on the On brand and talking about Zendaya. How do you pronounce her name?
Zendaya.
It is Zendaya. Okay. So I don't get this. I watched this ad. I saw that you pulled it up, and it's the air tennis game, and I'm watching this and I'm going, in what way does this benefit the brand?
Okay, so I have a hot take. So I think in order to understand why this is a smart play, and I think it is a smart play, you have to know the history and origin and the culture of On Running. So I actually did a podcast with Olivier Bernhard, who is the founder of On Running. He is a long-distance endurance runner from Switzerland. Absolutely amazing guy. Total legit athlete, and he was a Nike guy. He ran for Nike for years, and had trouble with Nike shoes. They just didn't fit right, or for the type of running that he was doing, they hurt his feet, and so he literally came up with a new invention. He took garden hoses, and he would cut them in these rolls, and he would glue them and tape them to the bottom of soles to try and get himself spongier, shoes, so that he would be able to last 20, 50, 100 miles when he ran. Took that concept to Nike. They laughed him out of the room, said, "You're crazy and this will never work and it's ridiculous." And so he said, "Forget it. I'll do it myself." And so that's how On Running kind of got their start. So it's like dyed-in-the-wool endurance athletes, legitimate, amazing athletic heritage, racing heritage. And now... And every deal that they've done and every shoe that they made, even though it's become somewhat fashionable, especially here in Southern California, if you go in any kind of gym or sports club now, people are not wearing Nikes. They're wearing Hokas or they're wearing On Running shoes. It's just fashionable to wear them. That said, I think because they've done all these really hardcore athlete brand ambassadorships, on the tennis side, for example, they signed a deal with Roger Federer. He became an investor. So they're on the tip of the spear, to the tip of the spear with Zendaya, who's at the tip of her generation. She's like the quintessential Gen Z representative. And so what are they trying to do now? After they've gone to the tip of the spear with athletes, now they're trying to go more mass, I think, and appeal to a younger generation. I think they're seeding Gen Z. I think that they can buy the cool factor from her influence. I think she has, have you looked at her socials lately? I think she has like 100 million followers. Like 100 million. It's ridiculous.
Okay, but again, what does air tennis have to do with the success of the On brand? Like, okay, she's popular and famous and young, and okay, great. And he's Federer and is twilighted his career, but is an investor in the thing. And they meet in this black and white utopia to have a fake match where the only thing missing is the ball, because they've got the moves, they've got the thing, and the tie back seems to be that she prepped for a movie where she learned how to swing like a pro tennis player. Again, it's not real tennis. So what is the point?
The point is, I think this is Red Bull. This is a Red Bull strategy. So I look at this like I do this terrible energy drink, which people drink. I only drink it when I'm on road trips to stay awake, but it's really bad for you. But Red Bull strategy, the whole time they bought their way into the industry. They bought their way into action sports. They bought their way into extreme sports. They bought their way into pro sports racing. And suddenly they're there. They just bought it with money, right? I think On Running is buying their way via Zendaya into the hearts and minds of people who love Zendaya and her movies. And it's sort of this movie magic moment where the creative doesn't even really matter. It's just like, guys, she's cool. You know she's cool. We know that you love her. She loves On Running. And therefore, it's success by association.
Okay. I say that's lovely, and I think it's completely useless. I mean, I think at the end of the day, they're going to get some borrowed interest out of it that'll be very short, but there's no, you can't build anything on it, because Federer's been involved in all kinds of stuff. I bet you couldn't rattle off the groups that he has been endorsed by or has been paid by to give endorsements to, and neither could I. And I'm in the business and you're in the business, right? And she's going to go off and do another thing with other groups, and it's not, I mean, it's going to be diluted. There's no value here. And this goes back to a thing that I believe very strongly, which is unless there is an honest to God tie, Ryan Reynolds owns the gin company. Ryan Reynolds owns the phone company. So they're funny things that he's doing because he's involved in it and going to stay with it. But for something like this, it's a flash in the pan. Like, okay, they're going to have this thing. There's no way that they could prolong it, really, that's in any meaningful way. What are they going to have? A rematch? A re-fake tennis match? Like, where are you going to go with it?
Well, I'll push back on this. So why do brands do white glove delivery of their product? And, white gloving basically means special delivery to the doorstep of Kim Kardashian, or this doorstep of Justin Bieber, or, look what happened with Erewhon and the Erewhon shake that Hailey Bieber drank, just by luck. Someone saw her drinking a shake. It wasn't called the Hailey Bieber shake yet. They saw her drinking this thing, and they're like, oh, if it's good enough for Hailey, it's good enough for me. And that thing spawned this, huge, deal and business for Erewhon. And we're just talking about milkshakes. Now you extrapolate that to sneakers, shoes, athletic wear. On Running, up to now, even though they're getting a little bit of a fashion nod in the zeitgeist, they've ultimately been born from hardcore athletes. And so I think this is their play to start white gloving, or bringing in ambassadors who will legitimize the fashion sense of what the brand stands for so that they can expand into apparel and other places. Right now, they're just known for shoes. You didn't know that On also makes like a sports bra or a tennis shirt or, shorts or running gear. You probably didn't know that, right?
No.
Yeah. And so the reason it's relevant is because there's also a corollary story right now about Nike that is losing market share and going down the tubes. They lost their CEO recently that brought the old guy back to try and save the ship. They torched their relationships with retailers. They tried to go direct to consumer, and their brand has not been strong enough because it's been eroded by the likes of Hoka and On Running, who have really tried to cater to the kind of clients that want to wear it more for fashion and function. But it's a real thing. It's happening. So I think this is a smart move.
See, now I'm going to push back once more. I don't think it is, because I think when what's-her-face drank the shake, if I remember right, that was organic. I think she just drank the shake. I don't think it was produced. I don't think it was paid for. I think she was just out, drank the shake, and people were like, I want to be like her, and drank the shake because she did it. I don't know that you're going to get the same play out of a highly produced, clearly paid for thing, which is not honest endorsement. Super curious to see how it plays out. Both arguments, I think, are strong, and I think there's cases to be made for supporting each. I'll be really curious to see in the long run where it goes.
Yeah. Cans and hands, Bill. Cans and hands. That's what Red Bull did. Do you remember? I remember being on a golf course with Travis Pastrana, the motocross guy that jumps, all the motorcycles. I remember being on a golf course in the 2000s with a bunch of skateboarders and Travis Pastrana and a couple other guys. And up comes that Red Bull, what was it? It was like a Mini Cooper with a giant Red Bull can on the back, and a pretty girl gets out, and she's just handing out cans and hands, like getting Red Bulls out to people. And I just thought, wow, this is smart. And they did that on golf courses. They did that on college campuses. They did that on every, Supercross, NASCAR, cans and hands. And so, this is a little bit more refined with Zendaya, bringing her in as a brand ambassador. But I think it's the same model. Is you get the, the shoes on the person. I don't have a clever alliteration for that, but
get the shoes on the feet. Yep,
the shoes on the feet, and that's how it's going to happen.
So, what else have you been thinking about this week?
Well, I lived and worked in Japan. I love the Japanese culture. And I caught a little news clip of how have you been to Japan before?
I have not been to Japan.
Japan is amazing. Recommended to everyone. It's one of the safest places in the world. Amazing food, culture, history, architecture. I mean, it's a beautiful place to go. And wherever you go is amazing. I like the middle, upper northern, and top northern, maybe Yokohama, Fukushima. Anyway, Tokyo's amazing. Hokkaido's amazing. But 7-Eleven in Japan is different. It's like high-end specialty retailer. Here in the United States...
So wait, 7-Eleven?
7-Eleven is a high-end specialty retailer. Here, when you walk in, you have to check your wallet, maybe leave it in your car. You might get robbed when you walk in. The floors are sticky with whatever spilled. It's
okay.
Dumpster fire. And so, 7-Eleven, all over the United States, is now taking a page from the playbook in Japan, and now they're trying to adapt their stores to be more shopper-friendly. So when you go into 7-Eleven in Japan, you could find, for example, a nice, fresh, warm breakfast or lunch. They have packaged onigiri, which is little rice and seaweed. They have fresh food that's packaged daily. Not the kind of sushi little pack that you get in the grocery store that you're afraid to get food poisoning. Like this, like legit fresh food. Everything is perfectly clean, beautiful, organized. It's a very shoppable store. Amazing. And so 7-Eleven's here like, hey, why can't we do that? So they're now sort of redesigning, reorganizing their stores to be more like Japanese stores. And I thought this was a super smart, rebranding or reinventing this big food business that's already got coverage everywhere you go. They're ubiquitous, but
it seems to be the time of rebranding. Have you noticed that? Like, nobody is sitting still. Everybody is trying to figure out something.
Well, this is my advice. I'm sure it's your advice too, that, you can either evolve or die. You can either bargain, tell yourself things are not changing, AI is not coming for my job, or, so-and-so is not going to ever be president again. It's like, we have to evolve with what's happening around us. We have to be realistic. And so if whatever you're doing right now is not working, if you're seeing, your stock price dive or your swoosh shoes not selling, you have to get curious and ask yourself, what in the hell is happening?
Yeah.
And you have to figure out a new plan.
Without a doubt. I think more brands are going to have to do that. The more that, as we were talking about earlier, they drop down. And I think that's, there's so many good lessons right now to be learning from watching the brands around us. Adweek, Ad Age are full of them every day. You can't swing a cat right now and not hit a brand that's learning something or in transition from something or what have you. This is such a great time to sort of watch what's happening around and see what you can be doing to help, your own brand accelerate growth and scale.
Yeah, so I'll put the call out again. Bill and I are here for you guys. If you have a product or a service, if you have a company or you think you have a brand and you want some help and feedback, we would love for you to send us your questions. We have a little form I'll leave in the show notes that you can submit to be considered for us to take your website or your whatever and do a critique of it or give you feedback. Or if it makes sense, we'd love to invite you onto the show as well.
And that is the pod for today.
That's the pod.